Витечки лодил спацерищу скал, там моя милый заквітла горонца, весну świacały doni się śmiał, glazurowy grocie czekał, tak jak dawniej dzisiaj znów, a zawołasz mnie z daleka, dźwięki melodyjnych twych słów. Pamiętasz kapryty nasze Poznania, wycieczki łodzią, spacery wśród skał, tam moja miłość zakwitła gorąca, wiosną świacały doni się śmiał. O, Stower jest pięknie wesoło, wydaje się czarowny świat. To wszystko jest piękne ukoło, tu każdy ma 20 lat. O, jutro cię złego nie lękam, harmonia i spacer to cud. Wesoła jest nasza piosenka.
The sound of Poland in the heart of Devon. The sound of a victim of war who lost her home and found a refuge 1,000 miles away. For nearly 20 years, this has been home, and almost certainly these 10 acres will be where she'll spend the rest of her life. 10 acres of concrete paths, of covered arcades, corrugated roofs, semi-barrack blocks and allotments. Her Polish song is one of the few remaining links she has with a way of life which was ended for her and for hundreds of thousands like her more than 26 years ago. The date was the 10th of February 1940, the day when the mass migration from Poland to Russia began. They were needed to work on collective farms in Siberia, and the deportations were on such a scale that eventually numbers ceased to have any meaning. In 16 months, endless convoys of railway cattle trucks crisscrossed the wastelands of Siberia on a journey which lasted 3 weeks, but which was to pass almost unnoticed in the history books. They had little food, little water and no sanitation, and the horrors of the journey were only matched by the work in exile and the suffering which was to come when the war ended. Now they were needed to work, but when peace came, no one wanted to own them, and they became a slightly embarrassing army of stateless citizens. Many died, many have never been heard of since, but miraculously, many did manage somehow to survive, and some, just a handful, came to Stover Camp, a few straggling lines of long, low huts hidden in the gentle countryside of South Devon. And that's where you'll find them today, nearly 500 people still nursing a nostalgia for Poland and somehow not quite a part of the country which adopted them. Stover Camp was one of the many which provided a temporary home after the war for the people who were delicately described as displaced persons. Now it's the last in the country. It was renamed Ilford Park, and while that fits the rural image of the farming landscape around Newton Abbot, the people in it somehow do not. The old ones can't forget Poland, and the young ones, who know nothing of their original homeland, are divided between family ties, the nostalgia which surrounds them, and the world outside the camp fence where they work and play. Eventually, they'll leave to become a part of it. Some already have. But it seems for many of the older ones that even now, the memories are too vivid.
We were expecting the Germans and not the Russians. I thought the Russians come as friends, not to let us taken over by the Germans. Instead of that, I learned it another way, that I had been arrested.
What happened to you then?
They put me in the prison. I was 7, we had 2 military courts on the 30th and the 31st of December 39. They didn't sentence me because there was nothing to sentence. They sent me back to the NKVD in the prison. They were sitting another year, always investigating. He was sitting down, writing, and afterwards, sign it. I said, what should I sign? Read it to me. Oh, it's not true, I don't sign. So it was on a year long. And in April 41, I was deported to Russia, in the hard labor camp. Was felling trees in the forest. No, and then afterwards, we were, after the agreement with English and our government in London, we became free, we became allied with the Russians, and they let us free.
The story of the Polish refugee became the story of Ilford Park. Now, 3/4 of the people who live here are more than 60 years old. They have no wish to leave. Although they're free to come and go when they like, there are some who've never left here since the day they came. They don't want to taste life beyond the fence. They're either too ill mentally or physically, or not knowing very much English, they're afraid to face the life outside without family or friends. Leaving would mean adapting themselves to a way of life they can do without. Staying means familiar faces around them and at least a feeling of home. Their real home may be 1,000 miles away. They may never see it again, although some who've become naturalized British subjects first have made a personal pilgrimage to the places they once knew so well. But the camp and these huts are home enough to keep the older ones content. Ilford Park has also given at least one person the happiest moment of her life. She was one of the slave workers who'd been seized by the Russians, but Mrs. Anna Mineko saved her baby son by giving him to friends. After 17 years came her personal miracle.
I decided to leave my baby behind because I had 2 other 5-year-old children with me. And I couldn't write to him for years and years. But the end is very happy. It's a happy one because he came here being almost 18 years old. And we are now together.
Did you know how he was for 18 years?
I knew more or less, but I couldn't write directly to them. Only I had some news every few years. I had few words around the world from other people.
Who did you leave him with?
I left him with a good woman who came and asked me to stay with her just before I was arrested. They took me from her house.
And he turned up at the age of 18?
Yes. We tried for many years to get him here, but it was very difficult. But at last he came.
Were you surprised to see what he looked like?
Oh, well, I had no idea how he looked like. I thought that he was small and plump or something like that, and he was very tall. When he was coming from the plane, he flew from Warsaw, I was looking behind him because I couldn't realize that the man who is coming was my son.
What was the first thing you did when you met?
Oh, well, I believe I kissed him. And we talked, and it was a very nice moment.
What did you feel like when you first met your parents after 18 years?
Fantastic. No, well, it was slightly strange. I never have been lost for expression to write to anybody letters, but as far, for example, writing letters to my parents was concerned, there was never, I've been usually under pressure. So the first time I've been there at the airport, not knowing any English whatsoever, and they did ask me something, you know, I could not reply, and there all of a sudden was standing a very tall gentleman who put an arm on my shoulder, and there was my father, actually. That was the gentleman who was going to be my father. Well, I think I've been so excited deep inside that I've been absolutely neutral. There was no reaction, you see. I think I do belong to those people. If I'm very much excited in my childhood, instead of crying, I would laugh, and my reaction would be either neutral or very spontaneous, but never cry. And I've been actually almost frozen. Then there was a mother, tiny little woman who was standing in the far side of the custom hall. Well, it was tremendous.